Hello and welcome, everybody. This is the third OPSWAT Academy hosted webinar. We have a lot of really exciting topics to talk about today, all centered around email and email security. I am very pleased to have our guest speaker today, our very own Itay Glick, Vice President of Products here at OPSWAT. He has over 20 years of experience in the field of information security and cybersecurity. Um, Lots of accolades. Itay, please introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you, Nate. It's a pleasure to be here and see everybody here on the line. Um, I'm Itay Glick. I'm the VP of Products for IT Security Product Line Unit here in OPSWAT. Been around in there of cybersecurity for the last 20 years, more or less. Started my career at the A200 unit, an elite intelligence unit of the Israeli Defense Force, following by other key roles in Dell, a lot, and finally reached here to OPSWAT. So, a pleasure to be here and share a little bit of my experience with you.
Perfect. Thank you. And for those of you that are joining the webinar for the first time who haven't seen the other webinars that are on demand recordings, my name is Nate Medeiros. I'm the product owner of Technical Certifications. I'm in charge of the OPSWAT Academy platform and bringing on these great guest speakers as we talk about subjects in cybersecurity. So let's jump right into it. Email. I mean, that's such a big one. And going into uh, you know the main subject, I'll talk to people in the industry um, that work in tech, and they might not be in cybersecurity oriented, but I'll often hear comments about how they're not really particularly worried about cybersecurity threats or email threats in general. What's the census on that? Email has been a historically uh, incredibly effective method for attackers to uh, get into networks, get into people's personal accounts, what have you. But are we still seeing this in 2023 as email being a big threat vector?
I think that, yeah, we definitely still see it. Email is easy. Everybody gets email. It's the number one tool that you have on your device for work. And attackers know that. And while they know it, they use social engineering skills to lure people to interact with them. So we still see email as the number one attack vector. More than 86% of the malware is being delivered through email. So that's a huge number, and this is why it needs to be very well protected.
86% of successful attacks are from email.
86% of malware is being delivered via email.
Oh, just malware delivered in general. That's like the
Yes,
avenue. Wow.
yes.
Do you have any examples for us, and recent examples for successful attacks that have occurred?
So there was an attack by Conti. This was the domino attack. Usually they're attacking high value customers, critical infrastructure, energy, financial institute. This is usually where they're going to attack. And they could do it all over the world. From a single location, you can send email to anywhere in the world. So it's extremely easy for them to get there. Another example is the snake attack. This was in South Asia, but they expanded the scope into Iran, Turkey, and other countries. And the whole idea was to get sensitive information from, again, government, military, energy, and technology sector. So they are all around and they're constantly being attacked.
Definitely still happening. So let's talk a little bit about how and why this is still such a big deal in the
Mm.
the modern era. I mean, email's been around for so long, and you'd think that it'd be something that we solved a long time ago, which it's obviously not the case anymore. If it's taking the majority of avenue for attempted attacks in the first place from all malware, it's working in some level, and that's really because of the two pronged factors of it, right? It's got you got this the actual malware technical side, and then you have the social engineering side. So let's break that down a little bit. You know, from your perspective, how blended are those two aspects, and what about it makes it still so effective?
I think that let's divide it into two. So social engineering and emails in specific. Um, email is great for social engineering. You can send millions of emails at a very, very low cost to all your target organizations. And in those target organizations, all you need is one person to click. Okay, so you don't need a lot of people to engage with you, but you need one. So you send to multiple people, to multiple organizations, and multiple different campaigns. One talking about, hey, you have this password you need to reset. One talks about you have a new invoice or a new delivery waiting for you, and it pushes different buttons for different people. So
Right.
you get
I mean,
to
yeah, there might be that one guy that's actually waiting for a package that day,
yeah,
and he clicks the delivery link. Yeah.
yeah. So they're sending it constantly. Eventually, they get one, and then they start to spread into the organization. Um, so this is the one thing. And then for your question regarding the technology, what they deliver, what they are looking for, there are different approaches to gain different information. So, for example, in the real past, they just send you an executable. Okay, nobody thought let's protect from sending executable. So you press
Right.
the executable and you got the malware installed. This was 20, 30 years ago. As time progresses, you see it evolving into scripts and then into macros, and then now what we see is unknown vulnerabilities as the major way to attack because all the other capabilities are blocked by the software already. So you need to
Right.
progress with it.
So let's talk a little bit about that delivery system. I mean, is it always, at what point in that cycle has the user made the fatal mistake? Is it always with attachments? Is that the only way an email can actually? Oh, that's actually. I just see this now. There's a question from one of the audience members that perfectly outlines what I was about to ask. Is can I get infected by an email just by looking at it, or do I have to click something? Which is exactly what I was leading into. So yeah, what's that moment of oopsie when you go through something like that?
So there are multiple cases. One um, is you get the link, you click on it, and then you engage. What does it mean engage? You download something from the web, you do an action and provide your credentials. So you engage with the hacker. This is the most common one. Then you have attachments. And for example, for macros, you would need to engage and press enable macros in Microsoft. This is the second level. The third level is even easier. You need to do less, meaning you just open the document, it exploits a vulnerability in the application, and this installs the malware on the device itself. Now, all of this are the really, from least common to the most common. But then about 4 months ago, there was a vulnerability which was in the TNEF of the email. Now, this vulnerability, you didn't need to do anything. You didn't need even to look on the email. You opened your Outlook, you had an email in the inbox. The Outlook did some processing on the email in the background because it renders the email even if you don't look in it,
Hmm.
and it exploited your device. This is really rare, but that's crazy. That's the
Right, but
nobody needs to trust.
that's a vulnerability with the Outlook platform then that was
Yes,
exploited.
yes.
And so you also mentioned that you see those things from least to most rare when you mentioned the interacting with somebody to steal their credentials versus two-stage script kiddie attack versus a high complexity. And really, is that because it's harder? It's a higher skill set for a hacker to build something that is less that requires less interaction from the user to steal their information or get what they want. Is it because it's easier just to set up like a farming website where I'm waiting for them to enter my passwords? It just takes less skill. Is that why we see that?
So there, there are different approaches. So if you, for example, you want to get the credentials to Outlook or to Office 365 from the user, the easiest way to do it is send a link. You don't send an attachment. You go with the easiest path, so you'll have less programs that can detect you on the way in. So you want the Office 365? Okay, that's easy. You do a website, which takes another day. You create a website, It's valid for everybody. After the login, you do a redirect to Office 365, and nobody knows about you.
Right.
The second way is an attachment. When you do an attachment, you usually want to gain something from the device of the user itself. It could be to encrypt his files. It could be to steal access to passwords, to other sites, to other locations, to network equipment, or you really want to have an implementation of a malware inside the device so you can spread in the organization from that device. So it really wants what you need to get in order to what you want to get in order and you take the tactic that allows you to get that to that in the easiest way.
Right. Got it. Path of least resistance is often how
Hmm.
everything goes with with hackers, with everything.
That's
But
correct.
okay, I want to go back. You mentioned something really interesting a few questions ago, where you mentioned unknown vulnerabilities and zero-day exploits. Uh, can you, because that's a term that we hear a lot in cybersecurity, is zero day attacks, unknown kinds of threats. But you mentioned this as if they were two separate things. Is there a relationship between the two, or are there any differences?
So in general, if you look in 2022, you would find that there were about 25,000 vulnerabilities. Okay, that's in general. Now
And these
you
are
had
across
them in
all
different
applications.
across all applications, and
Okay.
you would see browsers, HTMLs, and business productivity apps as the number one vulnerabilities because this is where people are researching for vulnerability. Now, these are known vulnerabilities today. When the security community discovered this vulnerability, from that moment on, it's called zero day. Okay, you discover it just now. It's time zero. You know about it. Now, even as we speak, there are vulnerabilities that are being used in the wild that nobody knows about them. The
Right.
security community doesn't know about it. Those vulnerabilities are unknown vulnerabilities, and we can see that the majority of the vulnerabilities are actually being used in the wild for almost 2 years before the security community knows about them. This is why the period of time of unknown vulnerability is extremely important. Okay, it happens
Right.
before the security community knows about it.
And I guess it'd be very difficult to identify how long they've been in the wild sometimes. It's almost like the
Hmm.
zero-day term is the day the alarm was first rung. I see.
That's that's correct.
And that's an important distinction, I see. So, you said 2 years. Is this an average, or is this just startling numbers that we have seen?
The statistic says that 75% of the vulnerabilities have been in the wild for 2 years before
Oh
discovery.
my gosh,
Yeah,
75%. That is incredible. Uh, so going back to the social engineering aspect, I do want to talk a little bit about this. There is typically identify different type of user from somebody that's using their email for um, a corporate network or a corporate system. I'm doing my job. I have my OPSWAT email account, here at this company or wherever I'm working, and then I have my personal accounts as well. Um, Now, are the type of social engineering attacks explicitly targeted toward companies because they feel like they're going to get more out of it, more money, or do we see the average internet user, the average person that's just getting by with their day, also seeing huge amounts of threats? I mean, is there a blanketing approach to everything, or are hackers specifically targeting companies?
I think that where when they're looking to get a large amount of monies or intelligence, they would target immediately the corporate, and they would not go directly to your private email, mostly because it's harder. Okay, your email at Oxford would probably be first letter of the first name, and then the
Right.
family name dot oxford.com, and your email could be the Mandalorian at gmail.com, and
Right.
and there is no relationship between them.
I see. So it's easier for them just to follow kind of traditional processes for how companies build out emails anyway. If I know this person's name and where they work, I can almost start to develop a phishing attack for that specific person just because I can figure out what their handle would most likely be for that account.
And
Uh,
that's one approach, but they can go into even easier routes. They don't need to research the name. There are a few email addresses in every organization that are public, like orders, invoice,
Sales, yeah.
support, sales. And if they're doing a little bit of research on the organization, let's say they know what are the products that you sell, they send to sales a query and say, hey, I have this RFP A, B, C, D. Can you give me some points about it to support it? Whatever, everybody would jump on it because this is the normal course of business of the organization. Or sending a resume
Mhm.
to the HR department. If they're looking at the job site, career site, also a great opportunity to send those resumes. So this is the areas where they would push.
Right, and a resume is a very normal situation where somebody would be sending an attachment
Yes.
that is going to be opened by somebody within the corporate network to look at and review. Um, so, there must be a higher correlation between those tailored, automatic email attacks with those kind of targeted emails. If I'm sending someone a resume, I want my PDF to do something rather than trying to trick the HR team into filling out my website form.
Yeah. So you would want them, if you send them a resume, the PDF would hopefully deploy a malicious payload on the device, install a malware, and the hacker got his first foot in the door.
Got it. Okay. And one of the things we focus on at OPSWAT as well, when it comes to different aspects of cybersecurity, is the OT kind of aspect of network security. And we have a lot of enterprise IT related solutions. A lot of people think of email as almost exclusively within that umbrella. Um, but there really is a true connection between any external IT network and these lower level OT manufacturing power SCADA control systems. So can we talk a little bit about that relationship, about how important even something like an email system can impact a an actual industrial manufacturing or processing facility?
Sure. So uh, we can take, for example, a campaign that was called Black Energy, where from the IT network, the hacker got from the IT to the OT. So let's
Oh,
take, yes,
actually, can we pull up that diagram? I think we have a diagram on a email uh, attack to an OT environment here. Just 1 second.
okay,
There we go. So
yes,
maybe you can use this as a guideline.
this is a great example. Yeah, exactly this. So when we have the hacker on the left on stage one, he sends the malicious email. Eventually, this could be the resume that we mentioned earlier with the PDF install. It press the user opens this PDF, it installs the malware on the device, and what this malware is doing from now on is capturing password for remote access um, tools. Okay, like a VPN, like a RDP, uh, that would allow the hacker later to get into the engineering workstation of the OT network in the OT network. Okay, so this would be what he would be looking for. He would try to go from device to device till he gets to a technician or somebody that have access to the OT network. And
Mhm.
when he get there, he now has a place where he can jump into the OT network.
I
So
believe
this,
this was wasn't this the method VPN for the Colonial Pipeline attack in the eastern U.S.? I believe it was a very similar delivery method of capturing a VPN credentials this way.
um, at the end, you want the credentials. So yes, in this case, I'm referring to a different attack. I think it was on Ukraine a
Oh,
little
this
bit
was the
while
Ukraine.
ago. Yeah. So I think it was Ukraine. But yeah, and at the end, this black energy caused the power grid to fail. Okay, so they took the power grid down by this. So this is the most disruptive OT that you can think of because no power
Right.
supply to cities, and all of this by a cyber attack, which is crazy.
Yeah. That's no heat, no power, just not people not able to get their, what they need to survive.
Yeah.
Basic human necessities, all from email entry. It's,
Yes.
it's crazy. So once the user receives those credentials, I mean, those are kings to the kingdom. It's kind of a basic, uh, you know, uh, IT issue in the first place when it comes to the most fundamentals of security is protecting your passwords. But it's this combination of uh, the social engineering aspect to get that delivered by that one person, like you mentioned before, that one person that opens the attachment to get it installed. So would this be classified as a unknown vulnerability on the system, or this? I mean, how would we call this? Because it's if it's an attachment that's getting executed from an open email to install software onto a lower level device. That's designed that way. Maybe that's an executable or whatever it is. Would we call this a vulnerability or just an unknown malware on the system? Like, what's the definition of this particular
Okay.
kind of?
So a vulnerability and the connected exploit to that vulnerability is a bug in the design or in the code of an application that you use. It could be Outlook, it could be Office, it could be Acrobat Reader, it could be your image viewer on the device,
Mhm.
and all of those are bugs. When you exploit the vulnerability, you gain control of the device itself. You can now install whatever thing you want on the device. You get like a command prompt of the device, and you can do whatever you want. That would be you have shell access now. And from that moment on, you can install your malware. Okay. Now, a vulnerability which is unknown, nobody would be able to detect it. Okay. Nobody would be able to detect the exploit that is using this vulnerability, allowing access to anything without anybody knowing about it. Okay. Then install a malware. The malware should be hidden. That's usually the case in malware. And and then it does what it wants. It gets the access. It gets out. So this is why I always focus on preventing the implementation, the deployment of malware to begin with, because after the malware is deployed, you might not even see it anywhere. Okay, it will be stealth, and you will not see it. The only noisy part and where the hacker is most vulnerable and exposed is when he is deploying the malware. This is when he's noisy.
Got it. And and that moment of deployment, delivery through email. That's when he's most exposed.
When the user clicks on the attachment, this is when he's
Um,
exposed because he is doing things now in your operating system, things that he shouldn't. You open an office process and you see connection to the net. You might see he's writing files to the disk. He's very exposed. He's doing things because he must do things in order to maintain his access to the device
right.
or to install executables. After he's installed, the malware can clean up after it. The malware can be stealthy. But at that period of time when the deployment has been done, he is extremely exposed, and this is where we can find it and prevent it.
Got it. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that. We've talked a lot about how malware is delivered. Why hackers use email as a primary method. But let's shift gears a little bit and start talking about what are we doing about it. What are some of the things that we can uh, do as cybersecurity professionals, or just as a company trying to protect my users? Just some standard practices that we've been using for a long time. Spam filters or malware scanning. What's the optimal approach, and where in line of that email chain do we want to put in these security measures?
Okay, there are quite a few things you need to do. I would start with the most basic one that costs you the least actually. Do some awareness training. Okay. Make sure that people in the organization know that there are people sending them PDFs, attachments that look very legit, and they need to use common sense before opening it. I'm not saying it's easy, but that takes quite a lot out of the noise. Okay, this is the first one. The second thing is antivirus. Um, Having an antivirus running and scanning all the attachments is important. You can do better. You can put multiple antiviruses in parallel to scan every attachment, and this would increase your detection rate and prevent even uh, more of the attack. So the more layers you put on, the better protection you get. The next level would be dynamic analysis. So files are detonated in an isolated environment, and what we are looking to see if, is exactly what I mentioned earlier. If an office file tries to communicate with a network where it's just an office file and it shouldn't, this is a malicious indication. So this would be dynamic analysis on every each and an attachment that gets in. And another technology which is called content disarm and reconstruction could be very helpful as it does a reconstruction process of the file, removing active objects and creating a new safe to open file for the user, even for unknown exploits. So it's very similar to detonation, but it does it all programmatically with libraries instead of running the actual file. And then another few recommendations is to make sure that all your applications are patched. At least you'll be
The
protected
vulnerability. Yeah.
from known vulnerabilities, which is again important. We can see some attackers using vulnerabilities from 2021. Okay, they're very opportunistic because the nearer the vulnerability, the costier it is, and some are just, as you mentioned, script kidders, and they don't have the resources for unknown. So depending on who you want to protect from, you put the different mechanisms. If you want to protect from nation state actors or very big groups like Conti, you need to put more and more layers of security. So patching is another option. And then you also need a good endpoint protection tool.
Yeah.
And you need
Yeah.
to make sure that it's running, okay? Because sometimes they disable it.
Yeah. Limit the user permissions to turn off the protective software on their applications.
Yes, true.
That's a recurring theme, absolutely, and that we see here in the industry. So from that entire life cycle of the email, I mean, you called out aspects that are completely relevant to the chain of email flow of just the SMTP traffic of that hacker clicking send and then going to the end user. But then you also called out elements that are after the fact, the human reaction to it of being trained, identifying that, almost having our own personal spam filters inside our heads about what we're dealing with when we see these kind of phishing attacks. But I want to talk a little bit more about the actual technology that can sit in the chain there, because you mentioned dynamic analysis and then AV engines. And so both of those things would ideally happen after the email is sent, but before it even arrives in someone's inbox, right?
True. The email is sent by the hacker, usually via an SMTP server, and then we can intercept the email in few different locations, depending how the organization wants to implement the security. All of them would be before it reaches the user. Um, Depending on the exact solution, you can be before it reaches the inbox of the user or while it's in the inbox, depending what the customer wants and how uh, tightly coupled he wants the solution in.
Got it. Now talking traditional sense of these technologies here, because I know there's amazing progress in dynamic analysis techniques that speed them up to 15 seconds for a complex file, or static analysis with multiple antivirus engines, all kinds of really great things that we're doing to improve like static analysis with heuristics and all these things. But let's just talk traditional simple basic concepts of a sandbox as a dynamic analysis and an AV scan as a static analysis. um, in my opinion, the email is a perfect format to have a sandbox action on a file. If somebody sends, um, if I send a resume to for a job application, or I'm receiving them, it's not going to make a difference to my entire workflow if I have to wait an extra 2 minutes for that entire sandbox process to detonate and analyze the file. Um, you know, is that something that's been taken up largely by the cybersecurity community, or is there some kind of barrier that's preventing the large sandboxes from processing all the emails? Because I haven't seen that as a very widespread approach to analyzing email.
So you're right that in most cases you wouldn't mind 2 minutes to wait for an email, but you would see that, for example, when I tried to log into this webinar, I got an email with a 6-digit codes, and it took 20, 30 seconds. And I
Right.
was wondering, have I done something wrong, etc. So there is an aspect of time that needs to be handled with the advancement in cloud applications. We are capable to reduce the time even more. And then with the advancement in sandbox technology like emulation,
Hmm.
the time can go even down to less than 10 seconds. And and this is what we are looking for. So I think that anything below 10 seconds is extremely acceptable by the end users. Um, Above it, up to a minute, we might get okay, not
Yeah.
not good,
Where's
but
my
after
email?
a minute,
Yeah.
it's not acceptable anymore.
Okay, so really, that just was what I outlined was what we're trying to get to in the first place. It was just that it was a little bit too long to be massively used, but the email itself is also we get so much of it. Everybody's getting emails from so many services. It's used to verify your identity. It's used to personal communication. It's used for accessing reminders for uh, every service you use. So, I mean, is that another potential reason why even like emulation level sandbox just might be too expensive to to apply to like an email flow? I mean, you maybe if you put it in, in line with other filters in front of it, right? Maybe lower down that chain.
I think it's a question of value and alternatives. If you don't have a good alternative that would bring you that security, and you need that security, the cost is not the factor. Okay, so for those organizations, specifically in critical infrastructure, you cannot really compromise on the security of the organization. It will
Yeah.
affect people.
Let me clarify. When I meant expensive, I meant resource intensive, computer expensive, like with hardware power. Because if I
Hmm.
have, even an emulation level a sandbox, am I going to have enough, servers or cloud resources to power that thing if I'm dealing with all these email flows? But I do understand that's definitely another thing I want to touch on later because um, that's another great conversation. But just to rephrase my question, would that be too resource taxing to use something like a sandbox emulation to touch every email, or do we need to have a more selective process?
From our analysis, this is relatively possible. Not extremely, since the new technology of the emulation, it's not as expensive in the past that you need to spin up different OSs, different applications, and run it for a longer time period. This is done much faster and with lighter cost. So there are some benefits over there. It does cost a little bit more, of course, but the emulation solves a lot of the resource problems.
It's attainable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I know that we might not have any notes on this directly, but let's actually go back to that cost conversation because even if a small percentage of the malware is getting delivered into an organization, I mean, we're talking about potentially millions of dollars of assets depending on the organization or losses. So, is there some kind of metric that we have for how much? revenue was lost for companies due to emails in last year, or do we have any sense of that whatsoever? Maybe we can look that up and get back as we look at that. But I mean, let's talk about that as a general concept, right? Because the cost of cybersecurity solutions in place for your organization versus the cost that you'll get from getting attacked. Is this something that you and in your many years of experience in the field have seen as a as an actual struggle for people to accept? Is that perspective changing? Are people more willing to pay for a solution that's protecting them from these things, or is this still kind of like a difficult conversation?
So let's start with a few answers, and this is according to IBM. The average cost of a cyber attack is roughly $4 million. Now it depends on the vertic and the region. It could go up to $9 million. Of course, it could go less, but that's just the range is about $4 million. Now, when you compare it to a price of email security, I would expect you would pay um, somewhere in the area of 5% to up to 10% max of that a year as part of the solution. Okay. Now, again, it depends on the size of the organization, but and the amount of security that you need to have. But this is
Hmm.
again the number one reason for attacks are eventually email. So you need to make sure that you protect that area. Um, so this is so the ROI is quite good. Um, and by the way, we see cases when hackers are attacking again somebody that they already got into. So you can say it's 4 million a year, but if you get hacked every year, or possibly every year, you need to make sure that you're doing it every year. So
Right.
ROI is quite nice for email.
Yeah, it's definitely an area where you want prevention. Absolutely. Um, so going back on that, I am curious because of how long you've been in the industry. Have you seen a shift in how companies um, accept having a solution like a deeper email gateway solution uh, based on how many successful attacks there have been? I mean, companies are losing money left and right. Is that changing anything with perspective in the industry on how seriously we should be taking email security?
I think that what we should continue to do is email is still number one. It doesn't really change from the threat level perspective. So we 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 need to continue and push a good solution for it now. With the advance of the cloud, some of the vendors of the email itself started to provide some security, so that's good for the common use case. But we are still left with the nation state hackers with their advanced capabilities like unknown exploits, um, and regional based attacks, and a lot of other type of complications that it put inside, or even sandbox evading malware. They have a lot of technology,
Hmm.
and you need tougher solutions for that use cases.
Absolutely, you got to expand with the times because the attackers aren't holding still. They're going to be creating new stuff too. I mean, it's not like there's just a set of unknown vulnerabilities and unknown 0 days that happened last year and then they're done. There's going to be a continuous amount more. And we have so many more applications that we're dealing with every day, so many more systems that we're rolling into our everyday lives, our even our corporate, networks uh, and tying everything together. That that diagram we showed earlier with the OT network, I mean, that's a good example of you have even if you have something that's isolated, in an OT environment, there are those connection points that come back out to the hacker. It's everything. Nothing's air gapped anymore when it comes to, most most not nothing, but most scenarios in even in OT networks, we're seeing so much more. Um, they're calling them IIoT or industrial Internet of Things. Devices that are historically have been isolated or on that local network are now communicating out to cloud source resources. And every time you open these new, um, holes within a particular network, you're introducing new areas of vulnerability. So this isn't going away anytime soon. There's going to be more vulnerabilities, more more holes that exploits can be found in, and this is going hand in hand with the history of email protection.
You
Is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Is there something that we can look forward to in the future as to when when we can protect users?
well, first you mentioned ROI for the organization. You should look at the email also ROI for the attacker. So it cost him zero money to send an email.
Right.
Okay, uses a zero-day exploit most of the cases to get in. So that's another zero money, and then he's in. So for zero day, his game is very easy. Okay, but when it goes to unknown exploits, this is where you start to have problems. Okay, this is where we start to have problems, meaning you can actually get in with an unknown vulnerability. For zero day, it will probably be blocked. If you're doing all the right things in the organization, zero days will be handled with most of the solution. But the unknown is changing, is flipping a little bit the conversation because now we would need to pay more, so you get to hackers that are more sophisticated,
Hmm.
and for them you need to put the more sophisticated or more advanced solutions like sandboxing, like and sandboxing every file, and like deep CDR or content assignment reconstruction technology to protect from them. So I would say that this is a little bit the light. We see the light in the tunnel, but I do hope that there wouldn't be any other new technologies that will come in instead of it, because at the end they would try to find another place which is cheaper to get in. So right now, when you block the unknown, it's not cheap for them anymore, and they cannot get in. They'll find a different place. They'll go to even spread discount keys near your office, which is also a good approach sometimes. So
Right.
eventually somebody plugs it in to see who it was. Okay, so
Yeah.
they'll be creative.
It's a rubber ducky.
Yeah.
I have a question from the audience here. We have a lot of questions that we definitely didn't get to so far. Just so anybody knows, if we don't get to your questions on this webinar, we still have a little bit of time, but we will be following up and answering your questions afterward. Um, this question is: if I analyze the headers of my email, can I always prevent attacks?
No, it could be from Gmail and it would look very legit, and you would not be able to prevent the attack. The attachment would could still be malicious. You need to go into the content level of the attachment in order to see if there is something malicious. One option it would be from Gmail, or the other would look very clear. The other option would be some kind of from a different organization, like a supply chain attack. So they hacked one organization, they're sending emails from that organization to your organization. You think, okay, it's cool, it's I know this company.
Right.
You press on it and you're at the same position. So no, that's not enough.
Yeah. There's many layers to it. I mean, even the attachment one, I think, answers that very clearly, because it could be a completely legitimate email from a person uh, that was given a malicious PDF, and they're just sharing it with you because it had some information they're trying to share. They don't know that that has some kind of back end executable embedded in the PDF file, or any other kind of um, malicious attack, and that would come. You wouldn't be able to see any of that with the header. So yes, so even if you get great at reading the headers, that's not quite enough to protect you from many different kinds of email attacks. Let's see, we have another one here. It is um, more of a statement, but it's kind of a question as well. Uh, all spam emails are typically sent with poor grammar and bad spelling. And now that it's mentioned, it's kind of a theme. Is there a region that's in the world that's historically known for sending out a lot of emails, and that would be you'd think that hackers would spend more time uh, making their emails grammatically correct if they're trying to target the most people. I mean, what's the consensus on that? Why do spam emails or phishing attack emails typically have less effort when it comes to spelling. Is that just because they're doing so many of them that they're not proofreading anything and they're just trying so many different things? Or is it, is there another layer to that?
So that's a great question, and I think that they would become more and more smooth, especially when you start to have AI like ChatGPT in the
Right,
process. They would use it and say, "Hey, write me an email that uh, would engage with the user at company X," and they would get the email. They wouldn't need to think about it. So I think at the end their game is scale, and if it's a small typo, it's a small typo. It happens to humans. It sometimes say, "Okay, it's human. It's not a machine." But
right.
I think that eventually with AI they'll get better and would get better engagement rates.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge subject right there. I mean, even just from the social engineering aspect of it, you know, the ability to form potentially thousands of emails. You could say, "Hey, write me 1,000 emails that would, drive engagement." Because your ChatGPT, if you ask it to write you a malicious program, it will say no. But if you frame the question correctly, it will tell you. How do I embed an object in the PDF to run a script so that I can automate my own whatever, right? It'll tell you how to do it. Um, not
I
that I'm,
I was
advocating for that.
referring more to the social engineering script itself. What is the message that triggers somebody to open
To
the
click,
PDF
yeah,
to
to
click?
click,
That's it.
yeah.
So,
I,
so
I'm
that's something that you can use ChatGPT very easily, and you know, write me a message that A from company X would answer to. Okay, great, here it is.
and so, in your opinion, do you believe that this is going to cause a spike in successful delivery of malware by having more officially written, less identifiable phishing attacks due to the nature of AI? What's your opinion on this?
That's a definitely a yes.
Definitely a yes. Is there? I mean, this is a relatively the public uptick of using LLMs um, is relatively recent this year. But do we have any watching data on this? Anybody watching data to see if there's a correlation?
I think it's early. I think within the next few months we'll see more and more data and identifying actually AI-based spear phishing campaigns. But it will take us a few more months because they're quite good. You know, when you see a ChatGPT writing something, it's hard to detect that it's a AI writing it rather than a human. Uh,
Yeah,
so so it's still hard
I
to
mean,
do that.
sometimes it writes it better than a human. In a lot of cases, that's what we use it for.
Less
Yeah,
less mistakes.
less mistakes. Concise sentences, no run-ons. Yeah, a lot of uses, and unfortunately, people are going to find uses for it for malicious actions as well. That kind of um, makes me think, though, because we do have AI as a tool for you know uh, trying to protect our assets as well. Um, Something like a spam filter, right? I mean, those use so many different kinds of rules and if ands and situations for to decide if that email is going to be spam and go to the junk folder or not. Um, is that something that's I don't think I've personally heard of anything yet, but applying AI technology to increase the effectiveness of spam filters to check for those things that are typically seen at a deeper level from um, uh, to actually flagging things as a phishing attack. Is there AI technology that's being developed or putting in place to be on the good guys side to help in this endeavor?
I think that this is something that everybody's working on right now to see how they can use ChatGPT to improve security. Again, this is something that we'll see more in the coming months, becoming more popular.
Right. And is that where that would reside? Is that would going to be inside the spam filter? Is that going to be a third party security solution? Do we have any sense as to what the trajectory is going to be? Is Microsoft going to swoop this up and make it part of their suite? you know, like there's they have so many things that they're already announcing, right? Copilot, it's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that being live and just using the AI solutions to just help with my everyday tasks. Um, but things like when it comes to cybersecurity, AI has been a conversation. I had this conversation in the previous webinar about malware analysis and AI analysis, and there was a really big kind of push for um, AI solutions in detecting malware. And this was, a couple years ago. And then there was kind of the conversation around it died off relatively recently. Um, and, I mean, excuse me, until relatively recently, when the large language models are now, you know, in everyone's face and all over the news. Is there going to be another drastic change when it comes to just the cybersecurity industry as a whole that you see? I know we're a little tangent off of email specifically, but you have so much experience in the field. I'm very curious to hear what your opinion is as to what what you expect to see the landscape looking like in the next 5 years.
It, it's a difficult question. Um, I think we'll see a lot of usage of AI into devices or security. We would see more behavior models put in into security mechanisms, and eventually, hopefully, let's say, in 5 years, we'll have solutions that will be really able to protect organizations from cyber attacks because we need to win this at the end. It's not a game. Okay, at the end, it
Mhm.
might cost lives. It will be used in wars, and eventually, the good guys will need to win.
Right.
Okay, so I hope that AI would allow us to be better prepared and better equipped to handle the security threats.
Yeah, we have a lot to look forward to and a lot that's going to be happening very soon when it comes to this. But you're absolutely right. I mean, this is, cybersecurity itself is so ingrained into everything about us. It just our way of life. A lot of people still have a big disconnect between cybersecurity and the food that they eat or the water that they drink. I mean, they are in the modern world intrinsically connected. You know, water treatment facilities rely on some network that is making things run smoothly, and that can get compromised. So the transport system for delivery of food, across the
The
country,
traffic lights,
the
you mess
traffic
with the
lights.
traffic lights to get it down.
Yeah, I mean, there's then the food will spoil, and then places can go without food. I mean, everything is connected now. It's so much more than just the bits that run into a computer. And when we see something like email, that's still such an effective method of delivery that can bring systems like that down, and that have brought systems like that down. Your mention of it's a matter of life and death is very true. It's a very this is it's a serious issue. And while it may be fascinating to talk about the technology, the truth is you're right. We need to win, and it's a excellent point, excellent stance on that. um, we do have a couple minutes left. We have about 5 minutes left, and I'll actually like to give my guest speaker a little bit of time to talk about the products that they're working on within the company. uh, I'm sorry to all those that haven't got to the questions. Like I said, we'll be able to follow up with those. Um, but yes, so I'd like to give you the spotlight for a little bit. Talk about what you're doing within OPSWAT, and how the project that you're working on is helping to help the good guys win.
Okay, so I think in the last few years there has become a trend of what's called zero trust, and there is a statement mentioned: trust no file, trust no device. So for me, it's trust no email and trust no device.
Right.
We've been working and improving our email solution, bringing it from an on-prem implementation to the cloud, as we see more and more of our customers asking for such solution to be deployed in the cloud, making their life easier, making it more affordable, making it easier to maintain. So we brought our email security to the cloud. This, of course, includes the multi-scanning technology that we have for multiple anti-malware, the deep content disarmament reconstruction technology that we have supporting more than 120 different file types. And finally, we are bringing our
Just for the
sandbox.
audience, really quick. Sorry. What is the product that you're referring to?
This is the email Meta Defender email gateway security,
Okay.
Meta Defender cloud email security. These are one on-prem and one cloud-based with anti-malware, multiple anti-malware engines running together. Deep content disarmament reconstruction technology. We have some phishing protection inside, password protection inside, a lot of capabilities that are required as a standard in advanced email security technologies. We are now adding sandbox technology to it. Also, each and every attachment will be scanned by a sandbox and interconnecting with Graph API technologies to allow for tighter integration with Office 365. So this is a little bit about our email security product. And then we have our Zero Trust Network Access product, which is focusing on the device and how to achieve a device that is and should be allowed to access local and remote network resources of the organization. So just covering it end to end.
End to end. That's fascinating. Yeah, those are really exciting projects. It's been fantastic to have you on board. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your knowledge and a bit of your time with everybody on this call. And to everybody, to the audience, thank you very much for participating. It was great to see you all on, to see you participating in chat. Like I mentioned, we'll follow up with anybody that has any outstanding questions that we didn't get to. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.